I thank the gentleman for yielding. This is a sad day for America. It's a sad day for the Congress. It's a sad day for our African American brothers and sisters who have lost a real leader and an extraordinary friend. I first met Donald Payne when I was in my mid-20s. He was active in the Young Democrats in New Jersey. I was active in the Young Democrats in Maryland. And that's how we first met. Don was about 6 years older than I am. And so I looked on him as when you're in your middle 20s, somebody in their 30s is really old. But we all saw him as a very serious individual. Serious about his activities, serious about his objectives, serious about the people. He had an extraordinarily productive career. As the leader has mentioned, and as I know other speakers before me have mentioned, he was a teacher. He was a teacher in the tradition of Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass, a fellow Marylander, said that it is easier to build strong children than it is to repair broken men. Donald Payne was focused on that concept as a teacher. And then throughout his life he was focused on making sure that America kept the faith with people around the world, that its values, that its hopes, its visions for ourselves were also our hopes and visions for others. Donald Payne, before he came to the Congress, I think had traveled to more countries than perhaps any member of Congress. He cared about people, and particularly people who lived in Africa. And I think there was no member who knew Africa better than Donald Payne. No member who risked more for the welfare of those who live in that continent, on that continent. My first trip as Majority Leader, Barbara Lee is here, she went with us. My first trip as Majority Leader, I went to Sudan and to Darfur. I made that my first trip because at that point in time it was one of the most troubled and still remains lands in our globe. Donald Payne unfortunately could not go on that trip. He was otherwise, he had another thing to do. But we had a briefing before we went, and Donald Payne was there. And it was clear from those who briefed us that Donald Payne was obviously the person they looked to for knowledge and insight into how we could get from where we were then to the plebiscite, to what is now the independent South Sudan, and hopefully it will remain so, notwithstanding the violence of Sudan itself. Donald Payne was an extraordinarily conscientious member of this body. But more than that, he was a man who cared about his fellow man and fellow women. Donald Payne was a serious member of this body. That does not mean he was always serious. He had a sense of humor. He was a wonderful, engaging person. But he was serious about what he did. And it reflected how deeply he cared about those whom he served and about his country. We could all speak for special order after special order and still not reach the magnitude of praise and thanks that he deserves. Suffice it to say that this body was a better place for his service. And as Reverend Cleaver so eloquently intoned, we were better people for having been his friend and his colleague and his co-worker. And I am pleased to join all of you who, like me, knew Donald Payne as a member of Congress, yes, but as a human being, as an individual, as someone who cared about us and we cared about him. I join Leader Pelosi and all of you and our friends on the other side of the aisle, because Don worked across the aisle. Don was not an observer of partisan differences, although he understood they existed. His objective was to work with all for the betterment of all. So I'm pleased to have this opportunity to join all of you in thanking God that he gave us Don Payne, that he gave him sufficient years to make an extraordinary mark here in this country and around the world. And I yield back the balance of my time.